Hello and welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. Today I have no whiskey on the cask. I will tell you a bit about my story with whiskey, and I think I will call it the development of my palate or flavor of my taste. And I will tell you about how I got to whiskey and how that influenced me, and where my favorabilities and my favorite whiskies came from, and at what time I favored which whiskies. It all started off when my mother founded a whiskey company where she sold whiskey as a mail order, and then quickly got into the internet, and I had to help out in the logistics with it, carry whiskey and collect whiskey for the different orders for the customers. And we were allowed to try whiskey, put your finger in and lick it and just feel how whiskey tastes. And when you are, let's say, a teenager with 14, 15 or 16 or something like that, all whiskey, all spirits taste the same. They taste like window cleaner. And that's kind of good, because high spirits are not good for teenagers. So yeah, that was the beginning with whiskey, and you didn't like it. I didn't like it. You don't like whiskey when you're young. My first contact with whiskey then was during my my college or my university degree. And be aware, in Germany you're allowed to have whiskey when you're 18. And we did cocktails back in the days. So I had a bit of connection to spirits, so I got a few cheap spirits from my mother, and we just got a bit of liqueurs and little bitters and that kind of stuff. And then we all got together, brought some juices, and then we had a big book with cocktails, and then we mixed. And yeah, I didn't really appreciate the whiskey back then. Whiskey was just something, okay, it's not as sharp as the vodka, and it's a bit sweet, and I just had some cheap bourbon. And yeah, that was it. So my first introduction to real whiskey, to single malt whiskey, was the Lagavulin. Back in 2007, Horst did a video about the Lagavulin 16. You can find it on the internet. You just type in Lagavulin 16 Horst Lüning, and you will find the video. It's a very, very old one. I think it's 480 pixels. So it's a really, really bad one as well. And it's really, really old, bad sound, bad everything. And yeah, it's in German. And so we kind of did it as a joke. I brought the bottle and it's like, hey, yeah, this is the bottle to the video. Hey, want to try it? Everybody's like, yeah, I want to have the smoke. That's what Horst said in the video, like, der Rauch. Yeah, the smoke. And then we all tried it and it was like, oh my God, this is really, really smoky. And we kind of had it like a joke. And when other student friends came over, we all tried it, like, hey, want to try something really smoky? And at one point we realized, that's actually pretty nice. It's like a smoky ham. And so we really got into the whiskey just by having it a few more times. And we started to love the Lagavulin 16. And during that time, I still helped my mother a bit with the company, and went to some whiskey fairs and talked to some business partners just to keep the relationship going, just to get some news. And so I really got into a bit of trying the whiskey and realized, okay, there are a bit differences. There are differences between the whiskeys, like one is sherry, one is this, and peaty ones are that smoky ones. And so got the basics down. And I really fell in love with the high peaty ones and the sherry ones. That was around, I think, 2008, 2010, something around. That was a time of Ardbeg Supernova. That's one of my favorite whiskeys. Ardbeg Supernova was one of the first whiskeys with 100 ppm. So really, 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 really smoky whiskey with a lot of sherry influence as well. Then the Ardbeg Roller Coaster, a mixture between very many Ardbegs from different ages. Really cool whiskey. I think it's a Whiskey Fair only exclusive one. And so that was the time during my my university degree, and then later with a company where I worked in the automotive industry. So I only helped out my mother and just got a few touching points with whiskey and had a few favorite smoky whiskeys at home. Then in 2014, I joined Whisky.com. And yeah, my first touching point then was to try a few whiskeys that Horst tried in the videos, and also read up on all the articles on whisky.de, which is quite a lot. They are not all translated yet. So there are new articles coming out every day. We're still translating them. So there's a vast number of articles, and I read up on all of them. And I wanted to join the YouTube channel very soon. So what I thought about is, can you just join a YouTube channel? If you just join a YouTube channel and just sit there and try a bit and give you 2 cents worth, and then people will say, how's that guy qualified to give me any advice? So I thought, okay, first you gotta show the people that you do understand whiskey and you do learn whiskey. And I think just reading up on whiskey is not enough. So I said, okay, let's do knowledge about the distilleries. It's you can show them the people what the distillery is all about and tell them what they do, and people will realize that you learned about whiskey because you can show and tell. So what I did is I said, okay, Horst is not that into the American whiskey. Let's go to the United States and film all the distilleries there, and Canadian as well. So I did the American tour in 2015, and my favorite whiskeys from that tour were a lot of Tennessee whiskeys. So not bourbon, but Tennessee whiskeys, because of their softness, their roundness. It's strange that people say, Jack Daniels, oh, not a whiskey, or it's just a cheap whiskey. I do like Jack Daniels. Also do like George Dickel as well, the other Tennessee whiskey. And but I do like not the old number 7. The old number 7 is nice, easy drinking whiskey. But 27 Gold is really good. Cask Strength Single Barrel is really good. And George Dickel, the 9-year-old, is good. George Dickel number 12 is also a really good whiskey. So I've really fell to love a bit more of the special Tennessee whiskeys and the older bourbons. I had an Elijah Craig 18 at Heaven Hill, and a few other older whiskeys at many distilleries, and they were really interesting, really cool. So after that tour, I really got more into the American side of the whiskeys. Did a lot of tasting for the Americans, and it was really cool. And so it shifted a little bit. I wanted to have more, a few spicy ryes. Didn't have many ryes on the tour though. But later I found the ryes just afterwards, trying all the whiskeys and realizing, hey, cool, these ryes, 1776 rye, or what was it, Knob Creek rye. These are all very good whiskeys. And in the end of 2015, I did the Isla tour. Kind of did a bit of a rediscovery of smoky whiskey then. Also did Campbelltown at the beginning. That was pretty cool, and realized what heritage can be in a whiskey. So I kind of rediscovered the smoky ones a bit. In 2016, I did a tour through India and realized how additive maturation in a very hot climate can have influence on the whiskey. That can be in a really interesting way with a lot of interesting flavors. Also, the fermentation is a bit different in India. And so really, really interesting. You have advantages, disadvantages. Some of the whiskeys have a bit of a pelty feeling in your mouth. Not quite sure if that's from the cask or from the whiskey itself. In 2017, then I did a Japanese whiskey tour. And then I realized how much the flavor of a whiskey can be changed by blending. When you come to Japan and you realize that there are so many different distilleries and distillery recipes that you then can marry together afterwards and find out how these different recipes can function, and it's very amazing. So it's kind of, but I already got something from, let's say, Four Roses and their sister distillery in Japan, the Kirin, the Fujigun Temba distillery. They belong together, and they have both this mentality of making so many recipes. The Four Roses distillery with a mash bill, and they do much with the distillation and then with maturation, and then they blend these whiskeys together. You even get a little a box where you have the different whiskeys from the warehouse and single barrels, and then you can try them and you can add them together and realize how the whiskeys are combining together, and it's really amazing. And that really gives you a bit of an idea of, when you have a whiskey, that there is a lot more behind that whiskey than just filling it into casks, letting it store there. Single casks are made that way, but if you have, let's say, a whiskey like Lagavulin 16, you have sherry casks, you have bourbon casks, and there's a mixture. There's a very delicate balance between the different ingredients in that whiskey, let's say it that way, even though it's all made from barley. Yeah, so got into the spirit or the drive behind the Japanese whiskey in 2017. I also went to Teeling in 2017. I think it was 2017. And then afterwards, I went, I think, 3 times now to Scotland, Southern Highlands, Speyside, and another time Speyside, and I will do another 5 times Speyside probably. And that really gives you an idea of how individualistic these distilleries are, because I don't think that this typical Highland style is what you have during your modern whiskey age. You had a bit of a typical Highland style, but still there were outliers there, and now everybody tries to be a bit more individualistic, and you have a bit more outliers, so there's not that much typical Highland style in there. You have a roundabout what a Highland style whiskey is, but there are so many individual characters there, and that's what it's all about, individual characters of distillery. So that brings me a bit more towards Scotland again. So what I want to say probably is a bit my experience with whiskey, or my favorability of whiskey, is heavily influenced on the experiences that you have with the whiskey. If you have something and you try it and you have a positive experience with, let's say, friends or at the distillery, then you start to grow on that whiskey, and it's just, and whiskey is much more than just the flavor. It's about a feeling, and it's about enjoyment of the whiskey that makes you the one whiskey your favorite whiskey. So I can always recommend you, when you have whiskey, have them with your friends, make an experience out of it. Even here on the channel, you can try the whiskey and tell other people, hey, how does that whiskey taste like, and that kind of stuff. So that makes it much more enjoyable and much more rememberable. So have a tasting at home. There's an article on Whisky.com that says tasting at home, what you need to prepare, and it's pretty easy. You just print out a bit of tasting notes and put a few glasses on, get a few bottles in the middle, think about the bottles, write something down that you can tell a bit of a story to the bottles, and that's your tasting at home. So how did your whiskey journey start? Don't go with, hey, I drank a whiskey and Coke. That, everybody did that, but that's not whiskey. A real whiskey experience is when you have a whiskey neat with friends and you really concentrate on the whiskey. When was that point in time when you had your first whiskey, real whiskey? So write that down in the comments. I'm really interested in that. You can write the whole story. If you limit it to, let's say, 20 lines, I will read it. But above 20 lines, that's a bit too much then. So thank you very much for watching. If you found this video interesting, then please feel free to give me a thumbs up, and see you next time.